Start? Okay, we are almost there. Okay, so let us start. Let us sit up straight, tense the whole body with double inhalation, relax with double exhalation. With every inhalation and exhalation, we tense more and more and relax more and more. Bringing our hands in front of our heart. Gazing up at the point between the eyebrows, sitting up straight. Let's invoke the presence of God and Gurus here with us. Divine Mother, Heavenly Father, Friend, Beloved God, Great Masters of Kriya Yoga, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Shri Yukteswar Ji, Beloved Gurudev, Paramhansa Yogananda Ji, Saints and Saints, Guide, Swami Kriyananda, humbly we bow at thy feet. O great ones, be with us here today and always. Help us, guide us, guide our thoughts, our words, our actions, that we may always follow the principles of Kriya Yoga in our everyday life. May we always live in an uplifted consciousness, always tune into thy will. We are thine, be thou eternally ours. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. And chant. Light to inner freedom, steal into my heart of hearts, banish my illusions. Sri Yogananda, light to inner freedom, steal into my heart of hearts, banish my illusions. Sri Yogananda, light to inner freedom, steal into my heart of hearts, banish my delusions. Sri Yogananda, light to inner freedom, steal into my heart of hearts, banish my delusions. Sri Yogananda, light to inner freedom, steal into my heart of hearts, banish my delusions. Sri Yogananda, light to inner freedom, steal into my heart of hearts, banish my delusions. Steal into my heart of hearts, banish my delusions. Steal into my heart of hearts, banish my delusions. Sitting up straight, closing our eyes, gazing up at the point between the eyebrows, calling out to Yogananda and all the gurus in this line lineage to watch over us, to guide us out of delusion, out of darkness into the light, light of wisdom. Keep calling out and feel their response in our heart center. May this be our constant prayer, that we be delivered out of delusion, and may we always live in the light, light of wisdom, be one with the Guru and God. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we are still in that chapter, chapter 12, where he is questioning, who am I? What is God? So the purpose of this life. So very interesting, where we read how he was training to be a playwright, and he was hanging out with this set of people, where he found that the places they used to hang out with, the kind of darkness, the kind of that environment is so bad that people, even good people, were behaving a certain way, which is so much in darkness, be it the police people who are so called, the ones who are supposed to protect the society. They themselves have become so insensitive as a community they had become. And also the places they would hang out with other friends, where he said that it wasn't that they were poor, the people were not, it's not that they were poor, it was their attitude to life, their attitude to the suffering of others. um, and and people who used to come there also in those places, they were also in behaving the same way. It was almost like everybody's hypnotized to behave in a certain way. uh, I mean, what he had written about, the low class, when he says, I'm not talking about low class being the poor who, despite the poverty of the lack of money, were still in a very dignified, living a dignified life. Whereas the ones he was talking about, low class, were the ones who had it all, yet, they were mean in their heart. Mm, I mean, the other day I was listening to something. There was this lady saint called Avayar in down south. She lived in 9th century, and she also mentioned something very similar. I mean, obviously, that the people who are wise, what they say is all the same, right? It's just said differently in different times. So she said that, where we have this caste system in India, she said there are only two castes: the ones who are very expansive, who are very giving, and the ones who are, misers, who don't share, and who close their hearts um, towards everyone else, everything else, not only just human beings, but everything in this world. So that is what Swamiji is also mentioning here, where he's talking about people. The low class that he is talking about is about people who are closing themselves towards the suffering of others and everybody else. So let us go ahead and finish reading this chapter, and then we will discuss, and then that will end this chapter, and next class we will do the next one.
From this utter mockery of justice, I at least learned a salutary lesson. First, of course, I reacted to such brutality with normal human indignation. Subsequent reflection, however, convinced me that injustice of one kind or another is inevitable in this world. For aren't we all, to some extent, lost in ignorance? Blind as I myself was, what right had I to blame others simply because their blindness differed from my own? My first thought had been, we need to change society. But then I realized that what was needed was a new kind of change, religious or spiritual, not social. Religion, again that word. This time I was being pushed toward it by human injustice instead of pulled by my own longing for some higher good. I began now to wonder if evil weren't a conscious will inherent in the universe, how else to account for its prevalence on earth, for man's cruelty to man, for the brutality of the Nazis, for the terrors millions of us suffered under communism? How else to explain the appalling twist of fate that causes the good intentions of many who embrace communism to result in human debasement, slavery, and death? What, outside of a renewed, widespread return to God, a revolution in spirit, could correct the unnumbered, almost unimaginable wrongs in this world? I gave much thought at this time to communism as a force for evil. My parents had returned from Romania with tales of Russian atrocities. Our Romanian friends there were suffering under the new regime. Some of them had been deported to slave labor camps in Siberia. Surely, I thought, the common argument against communism, that it is inefficient, misses the point altogether. What is truly wrong with it is not that its top-heavy bureaucracy results in the production of fewer material conveniences, nor is it even that communism denies people their political rights. What is monstrous about it is that it treats materialism itself as a virtual religion. Footnote: materialism in this context refers to the philosophical theory that all phenomena, including those of the mind, must be attributed to material agencies. Back to the text. Denying the reality of God, communism sets up matter in his place and demands self-abnegation of its adherents as much as religions do everywhere. For committed communists, the shortage of material goods reveals not the inefficiency of their system, but the measure of their willingness to sacrifice for the cause. Believing in nothing higher than matter, they see spiritual values, truthfulness, compassion, love, as utterly meaningless. They feel morally justified, rather, in committing any atrocity that will advance their own ideology. Their motto is, quote, "In every circumstance, ask yourself only what is best for the cause." Theirs might be called a religion of unconsciousness, of non-values. It does offer, however, a pseudo-moralistic rationale for the materialistic values of our age. For this reason, its teachings will continue to spread, I'm afraid, until mankind everywhere embraces another, a true kind of religion, one that perceives God, not matter, at the heart of reality. Pursuing these thoughts, I found myself concluding, for reasons both objective and subjective, and for the sake of mankind generally, as well as for my own sake, that what I wanted, what all mankind really needs, is God. The question returned to me with increasing urgency: what is God? One evening, taking a long walk into the gathering night, I deeply pondered this question. I dismiss as absurd, to start with, the popular notion of a venerable figure with flowing white beard, piercing eyes, and a terrible brow striking fear into all those who disobey him. Science has shown us an expansive vastness comprising countless galaxies, each one blazing with innumerable stars. How could any anthropomorphic figure have been responsible for creating all that? What then about fuzzy alternatives that had been proposed to suit the abstract tastes of intellectuals? A, quote, cosmic ground of being, for example. What a sterile evasion, what a non-concept. Such formulas I considered a cop-out, for they gave one nothing to work with. No, I thought, God has to be, if nothing else, a conscious being. I had read alternate claims that he is a dynamic force. Well, he had to be that too, of course. But could it be a blind force like electricity? If so, whence came human intelligence? Materialists claim that man's consciousness is produced by, quote, a movement of energy through a pattern of nerve circuits, end quote. Well, but intelligence, I realize, is not central to the issue anyway. Intelligence implies reasoning, and reasoning is only one aspect of consciousness. It might almost be called a mechanical aspect, inasmuch as it is conceivable for something electronic to be devised that will do much of his reasoning for him. René Descartes' famous formula, I think, therefore I am, is superficial and false. One can be fully conscious without thinking at all. Consciousness obviously exists apart from ratiocination and is a precondition for any kind of thoughtful awareness. What about our sense of I-ness, our egos? We don't have to ponder the question objectively. We simply know that we exist. This knowledge, I have come to understand, is intuitive. Even a newborn baby making its first cry doesn't become self-aware because of that cry. It requires self-awareness for it to suffer. Even a worm demonstrates self-awareness. Prick it with a pin, and it will try to wriggle away. Obviously, then, consciousness is at least latent everywhere and in everything. God himself must be conscious, and having created everything, must also have produced it out of consciousness, not out of his consciousness, for consciousness cannot be something he possesses. He is consciousness, essential consciousness. What about self-awareness? This too must be inherent not only in all life, but in everything. We are not merely his creations. We manifest him. We exist because he exists. To cut to the chase, all of us, as his manifestations, have the capacity to manifest him more or less perfectly. Surely, then, what we need is to deepen our awareness of him at the center of our being. What a staggering concept! I recalled the days I had spent watching the ocean surf break into long, restless fingers among the rocks and pebbles on the shore. The width of each opening, I reflected, determined the size of the flow. Similarly, if our deepest reality is God, might it not be possible for us to chip away at our granite resistance to him, and thereby widen our channels of receptivity? And would not every aspect of his infinite consciousness flow into us then, like the ocean, abundantly? If this was true, then obviously our highest duty is to seek attunement with him. And the way to do so is to develop that aspect of our nature which we can open to him. The way to do that, obviously, is to lift our hearts up to him and to seek his guidance in every thought and deed. In so doing, he must, since we are a part of his consciousness, assist us in our efforts to broaden our mental channels. I realized now that true religion is no mere system of beliefs, and is a great deal more than any formalized attempt to wheedle a little pity out of the Lord by offering up pleading, propitiatory rites and prayers. If our link with him consists in the fact that we are already a part of him, then it is up to us to receive him more completely and express him more fully. As it says in the Bible, but as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God. This, then, is what religion, true religion, is all about. What I had seen thus far of religious practices and eschewed in disappointment was not true religion, but the merest first toddling steps up a stairway to infinity. One might, I reflected, devote his entire life to this true religion and never stagnate. What a thrilling prospect. This, then, would be my calling in life. I would seek God. Dazed with the grandeur of these reflections, I hardly knew how or at what hour I found my way home again. Home at this time was a large 5-room apartment on South Battery, which I shared with 4 of my fellow drama students. On my return there, I found them seated chatting in the kitchen. I joined them, more or less automatically, for a cup of coffee. My thoughts, however, were far away from that convivial gathering. So overwhelmed was I by my new insights that I could hardly speak. "Look at Don, what's he got to be so solemn about?" When they found that I couldn't or wouldn't participate in their jocularity, the laughter turned to teasing. "Don keeps trying to solve the riddle of the universe. Yuck, 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 yuck." "Ah, sweet mystery of life," crooned another. "Why, can't you see?" reasoned the fourth, addressing me solemnly. "It's all so simple. There's no riddle to be solved. Just get drunk when you like, have fun, shack up with a girl whenever you can, and forget all this craziness." "Yeah," reiterated the first heavily, "forget it." To my present state of mind, my roommates sounded like yapping puppies. Of what use to me such friends? I rose and went quietly to my room. A few days later, I was discussing religion with another acquaintance. "If you want spiritual teachings," he remarked suddenly, "you'll find all your answers in the Bhagavad Gita." "What's that?" Somehow I found this exotic name deeply appealing, and also in some unaccountable way familiar. "It's a Hindu scripture." "Hindu? And what was that?" I knew nothing of the Indian teachings. This name, however, the Bhagavad Gita, lingered with me. If religion was a matter of becoming more receptive to God, it was high time, I decided, that I got busy and worked on making myself receptive. But how? It wasn't that I had no idea how to improve myself. Rather, I saw so much room for improvement that I hardly knew where to begin. There was the question of my psychological faults, intellectual pride, and overtly critical nature. No one, myself included, was happy with these traits in me. But how was I to work on them? And for that matter, were they entirely unmixed evils? Was it wrong, for instance, to think? Was it wrong to stand honestly by the fruits of one's thinking, regardless of what others thought? And was it so wrong to be critical of attitudes which one's discrimination declared to be false? People who were more concerned for their own comfort than for my spiritual development condemned these traits in me outright. But to me it seemed that there were aspects to my very faults that must be considered virtues. How was I to sift one from the other? Contemplating my more socially acceptable virtues, I saw that here the very opposite was true. In some ways these so-called virtues assumed the nature of faults. My compassion for the sufferings of others, for example, prompted me to try to help them beyond any power I had to give. How else to account for my desire to help them by my writings when I didn't even know what to write, when I didn't by personal experience know truth? Here again, how was I to sift truth from error? Was there any way out of the psychological labyrinth in which I now found myself? Even on a physical level, the possibilities for self-improvement seemed bewilderingly complex. I read in a magazine advertisement the names of several famous people who had been vegetarians. Vegetarians? Was it really desirable or even possible to live without eating meat? Again, I read somewhere else that white flour is harmful to the health. White flour? Heretofore, my idea of a balanced meal had been hamburger on a white bun, decorated with a thin sliver of tomato and a limp wisp of lettuce. It seemed now that there were all sorts of points to consider on even so basic a subject as diet. Finally, bewildered by the sheer number of choices before me, I decided that there could be but one way out of my imperfections: God. I must let Him guide my life. I must leave off seeking human solutions and give up defining my search in terms of human effort. And what of my plans to be a playwright? Well, what had I been writing anyway? Could I, who knew nothing, say anything meaningful to others? I had deluded myself for a time with the thought that perhaps by vague allusions to the truth, I might write works with such cryptic messages that others would understand, even if I myself had no idea what those messages were. But now I realize that in this way out, common as it is among writers, I had not been honest. No, I must give up writing altogether. I must give up even thinking about flooding the world with my ignorance. Surely out of very compassion for others, I must leave off trying to help them. I must renounce their world, their interests, their attachments, their pursuits. I must seek God in the wilderness, on a mountain top, in complete solitude. I would become a hermit. And what was it I hoped to find once I made such a complete renunciation? Peace of mind, inner strength perhaps, a little happiness. Wistfully I thought, happiness. I recalled the pure happiness I had known as a child, lost now in the pseudo-sophistication of my intellectual youth. Would I ever find happiness again? Only, I thought, if I became once again simple like a child. Only if I forsook my over-intellectuality and opened myself completely to God's love. I pursued this line of thinking for a time. Then a new doubt seized me. Was I losing my mind? Whoever had heard of anyone actually seeking God? Whoever had heard of anyone communing with him? Was I a complete lunatic to be dreaming of blazing trails where no man, so far as I knew, had ever ventured before? For I knew nothing as yet about the lives of true saints. Vaguely I'd heard them described as people who live close to God, but the mental image I had formed of them was of no more than ordinarily good people, going about smiling at children, doing kind deeds, and perhaps murmuring benignly Pax Vobiscum or some such pious formula to anyone who got in their way. What demon of presumption possessed me that caused me to dream of actually finding God? Surely I must be going mad. Yet if this were madness, was it not a more solacing condition than the world's vaunted sanity? For it was a madness that promised hope in a world bereft of hope. It was a madness that promised peace in a world of conflict and warfare. It was a madness that promised happiness in a world of suffering, cynicism, and broken dreams. I knew not how to take even my first steps toward God, but my longing for him had by now become an obsession. Where could I turn? To whom could I look for guidance? The religious people I had met, the monks, priests, and ministers of the gospel, had seemed quite as lost in ignorance as I was. It occurred to me that I might find in the scriptures a wisdom that those monks, priests, and others had overlooked. At least I must give scripture a try. And what of my plans to become a hermit? This path surely I must follow also. But where? How? With what money to buy the essentials of life? With what practical knowledge to build a shelter, plant food, and otherwise care for myself? Was I not, after all, a complete fool, lost in wild-eyed, impractical dreams? Surely, if practical steps had to be taken, there must be a more pragmatic solution to my dilemma than drifting off to an existence for which I was utterly untrained. At this point, reason stepped onto the scene briskly to offer me a resolution for my dilemma. There's nothing wrong with you, it asserted, that vigorous, healthful country living can't cure. You've been spending too much time with jaded city people. Get out among simple, genuine, good country folk if you want to find peace of mind. Don't waste your life on impossible dreams. Get back to the land. It isn't God you want, it's a more natural way of life, in nature's harmony and simplicity. shades of my Mexican fiasco. Ease, in fact, not simplicity, was at the heart of this message. For God poses so mighty a challenge to the ego that man will grasp at almost anything rather than heed the call to complete self-surrender. And weakling that I was, I relented. I would, I decided, heed reason's counsel. I would go off to the country, commune with nature, and live there among more natural human beings.
So we see the kind of dilemma, the kind of confusion that he was going through. And he was thinking probably, something is wrong with me. I'm not able to understand what is this. He was not, again, not able to communicate with others, not understanding their way of living. And there's a constant turmoil in his mind, and he realized that if this is not working, then what will work? Probably religion. The religion he was exposed to was not really something that he liked, right? He kept going back to it and then would come off saying, no, it's so dry, so it has no life in it. But again, he's coming back to the same thing. What will change? What will help the world? He's saying that from this utter mockery of justice, that interaction he had with the police people, he said, first, what I had was indignation. Then, subsequent reflection convinced me that injustice of one kind or another is inevitable. We see people around us, wanting to change the world, fighting for this or fighting for that, protesting for this. We cannot, as an individual, I mean, if something will all keep sprouting up, if something changes here, something else will come up. The whole world, this is a very Rajasic planet, and this is a planet that is, that is part of this duality. So there always be a place which, if it seems like very nice, the other place will be in turmoil, the third place will be something else. We cannot go around, changing the world. What can we do? Each individual has to work at changing themselves. I can only vouch for myself. I can only, the only control, probably not completely, we can say, the only thing that we can work on is ourselves. Each individual, if they make that effort to change themselves, automatically the consciousness of the planet will shift, right? And that is what, he is, where he is heading towards in his own thoughts, in his own conclusions, is exactly what Babaji and Jesus Christ have, collaborated to bring about in this world. As we read in Autobiography of a Yogi, because this is now a, ascending Dwapar Yuga, and this is what they had, thought about, that the world has to change, and for that we have to change the consciousness. So each one, each individual, through Kriya Yoga, of course, changes, and in the process, this of light, and slowly planet is surrounded, the consciousness of the planet is uplifted. Here, he is coming to these conclusions on his own, but there is nobody to tell him, yes, what you're thinking is the way to go. So here he's saying that, each one has to change themselves. We can't go around. The world is going to continue to be the way it is. But so again, he says, he came back to that, again, that word religion. But again, he's not understanding, because the religion he was exposed to is not what he really wanted to follow at the end of the day. So he's saying, and then he's just unable to accept, how can somebody, people, men, create suffering for others, kill people, like the way he's talking about Nazis doing what they are, killing people. And then he's talking a little bit on communism, where initially, when the thought must have come for communism, the ideals seemed to be very good for, general upliftment, than, just the capitalism where the rich become richer, poor become poorer. But then they get so wedded to that cause that then the cause becomes everything rather than people. right? People are no more important. It's the cause that matters. And in the process, they ended up committing atrocities, cruelties on their fellow men just to make sure that they follow the cause. And what the main problem with communism was, they took God out of the picture. And he's saying that it is never going to work, because the moment you leave that out, the feeling part of it, right? Then it becomes so dry, it becomes so insensitive, that all they could look out for was their cause. So as he's saying here, what is monstrous about it, that it treats materialism itself as a virtual religion. So they will withhold things, as even the essentials are like rationed out. In all these communist countries, that's the main thing. People would stand for days together to get even the basics, and that became the most important part, just to get the basics. And living in kind of always in one is renunciation, where a person, even if he is able to afford everything, is withdrawing himself and saying, no, I don't need it. Okay, he's able to. It's an inner renunciation that matters, whereas here they are forcefully putting it on people who might actually want to have it, but then they're so all the time they're so focused on getting those things, that he says materialism itself is a virtual religion for them. Denying the reality of God, communism sets up matter in his place. Something has to replace, right? You take something out, something else will take its place. So, unfortunately, in this matter, the material world becomes so important and demands self abnegation of its adherents, much as religions do everywhere. So instead of no God, or where the religion they are the others follow, instead of that, these guys then are talking about this. There's always something, and this is worse, he says, and everybody is following that. People who are living there, it's like as I said, it's a very blind, hypnotic kind of a thing. Everybody is following the same thought process in that area. For committed communists, the shortage of material goods reveals not the inefficiency of their system, but the measure of their willingness to sacrifice for the cause. The cause becomes so important, not the people, right? And later on we see that for Swamiji, as when he went about setting up Ananda, his one of the mottos was people are more important than things. That was the one of the guiding rules for him, and he always adhered to that. And that is why we contrast that to what he's mentioning here. Even in that, when he had not yet met master, it was so obvious for him that this is not the way, right? That is why he's probably mentioned this also, this thought process, this the way of the political environment that was there at that time. And he says there might be called a religion of unconsciousness, of non-values. So again, he's contrasting. So he's in this quest. He is constantly questioning himself, and then again he comes back. He says the question returned to me with increasing urgency. So he realized that, okay, if this doesn't work for me, that religion doesn't work, what works? God. Then who is God? Now we have seen in the movie also, the answer movie, where he is asking this question. He is always constantly seeking, and he comes to the conclusion that I am conscious. So probably what is God? God must be consciousness itself. So that is where he has come to the conclusion, and it can't be it cannot. Master also said that God is not somebody living in an antiseptic environment out there somewhere wearing white robes, white beard, and uh, and giving out punishments to people who don't adhere. He said, how can that be? And Swamiji again, he's coming to his own conclusion, same thing. He says it's not possible. He is a dynamic force. He had to be that, of course, but could it be a by force? Like electricity, Master said, is an animal current, right? So, if so, whence came human intelligence? Materialists claim that man's consciousness is produced by a movement of energy through a pattern of nerve circuits, whereas Master said that brain itself is a part of the consciousness. It's not something that is inside of us, it is all around us, and we are just part of that, right? And when he's talking about the thoughts also, where he's talking about this person's famous formula, I think therefore I am. Master said that thoughts itself are not individually rooted but universally rooted. Based on where our consciousness is, we connect with that particular thought that is going around all of us. It's all there. Anything that any one of us can think is already out there in the ether. We just attract to us that thought based on the kind of consciousness. I mean, if we are a very negative person, we're always thinking negative, we will attract those thoughts again and again. So so again he's coming to this right conclusions, which comes brings us to the point that Swamiji, even though he's putting himself as a person, an ordinary person who's out questioning and trying to understand, we can make out from what we have been reading so far till this 12th chapter. He wasn't just an ordinary, very, very just seeking person. It is not possible, if it was just that he would have come to these conclusions. It is these are very highly this is what Sanatan Dharma is, right? So for him to come to these conclusions on his own, even by just intellectually processing it, it is not possible. It shows that he was you know he brought it from his previous lives as a yogi. He knew, right? Deep down he knew. Deep down all of us know, just that there are more layers around some people, and for him probably there were only these few layers of ignorance that were surrounding him, so he was able to quickly wade through them. Okay, so again, he's again also talking about ego. He says, what about our sense of I-ness, our ego? We don't have to ponder the question objectively. We simply know that we exist. Even when we sleep, when we wake up, if somebody asks, how was the sleep? We know that I slept well, or I don't think I slept well. How do we know? We were supposedly, just gone from this world, very much asleep. Yet we are never, it's even in that sleep state, we know we are in touch. We are very much conscious in a different state, but we do notice it. So he's saying that we simply know that we exist. The knowledge I have come to understand is intuitive. Even a newborn, when he says that it doesn't become self-aware just because it cried. It requires self-awareness for it to suffer, right? And he says that even a little worm, if we put a pin to it, it tries to move back. Why? It is that intelligence is given. There is this consciousness, and it knows that it is under attack, and it tries to. So everything in this world, whichever moving thing, or even, I mean, as we saw in Autobiography of a Yogi, where J.C. Bose demonstrated to Master that the plants, when you prick, he says that they I mean, we saw how they shivered by that violence, like it completely, the movement stops whenever it's something, a knife is put through it. It stops, as like there is a shivering that happens. So every living thing is conscious, right? Even though there are some that are more conscious, humans who are most conscious, but still that exists, and everything tries to escape the suffering. So he says, obviously, then consciousness is at least latent everywhere and in everything. These are such beautiful conclusions he is coming to. God himself must be conscious, and having created everything, must also have produced it out of consciousness, not out of his consciousness, for consciousness cannot be something he possesses. What brilliant conclusions. He is consciousness, essential consciousness, and that is what the Indian scriptures tell us, that God is this pure consciousness, and he just vibrated a part of his consciousness, and that became this universe, and which means he became it, right? It is not, he didn't go out there to create, he didn't have to go buy ingredients to buy make this universe. He became it, and yet he is apart from it, right? So he came to those conclusions. It's so uncanny. It's not possible for any normal person to think himself to this level. So he talks, next question he asks, what about self-awareness? This too must be inherent, not only in all life, but in everything. We are not merely his creation, we manifest him. We exist because he exists. Again, profound. And Master again said that God sleeps in rocks, wakes up in plants. I'm not able to, I don't remember the entire thing. Then, that it comes to the animals, and finally it fully manifests in the human form. And he's coming to this almost similar, he's understanding this, the whole drama of this creation, right? Then he comes to, cut the chase. All of us, as his manifestations, have the capacity to manifest him more or less perfectly, especially the mankind, right? As Master said, humans are the species that has the nervous system to completely manifest God. Now that is why he said that we are, the humans are made in the image of God, right? So he's also coming to that we have that, that the capacity to manifest him more or less perfectly. Surely then, what we need is to deepen our awareness of him at the center of our being. Amazing, right? This, we can just read it again. Cut to the chase. All of us, as his manifestations, have the capacity to manifest him more or less perfectly. Surely then, what we need is to deepen our awareness of him at the center of our being. He knew it. What a staggering concept, he says. Then he goes on to talk about, him watching the ocean, and so he says again, the width of each opening I reflected determined the size of the flow. Similarly, if our deepest reality is God, might it not be possible for us to chip away at our granite resistance to him and thereby widen our channels of receptivity? And he goes on to talk about what Jesus said, that to as many as received him, to them gave he the power to become the sons of God. So this is a very important topic that we often talk about in attunement, because Master always said that, be in tune with me. And Swamiji also, towards, before leaving his body, when somebody had asked him, what, in all your years of discipleship, what do you think is the most important thing that a person should do, to find God, or to be in tune with to find God, basically? And they all thought that probably he'll say Kriya Yoga. And Swamiji said attunement. That is the most important. And here he again intuitively got it. He says that therefore we need to widen our ourselves. It becomes a channel of receptivity. And where Jesus also says that to all those who received him. So he didn't say that whoever, follows me or is with me, only them he becomes a son, then he becomes the sons of God. He said to all those who received him. Receptivity is the most important thing for us to progress on the spiritual journey. The more we are open, the more we receive, and the chances of us realizing ourselves is high. So he says that the way to do that, obviously, is to lift our hearts up to him and to seek his guidance in every thought and deed. In so doing, he must, since we are a part of his consciousness, assist us in our efforts to broaden our mental channels. He is already got the point that it is all about attunement. Attunement right now, he doesn't know that, a guru is needed. You don't just directly go to God. A guru is needed, a channel who, is a pure channel and takes you through. But he got the point absolutely. So he says, I realize now that true religion is no mere system of beliefs and is a great deal more than any formalized attempt to wheedle a little pity out of God by offering a pleading propitiatory rites and prayers. Again, Master always said that you are sons of God. In that song chant that we do, Door of my heart open wide I keep for thee, which has been taken from a Bengali chant by Rabindranath Tagore. The original chant has a line which says that, I plead that you come to me. I beg of you that you come to me. Master removed that line. He said, no, we don't beg. We are sons of God. So we demand. I mean, even that Whispers from Eternity, the book he wrote, he says these are prayer demands. You demand of, he is your father. And as a son, you don't go pleading, don't go begging to your father. You are a child of God. You are the son of God. You have the right to demand from the father. So, and he is again talking the same thing. He's come to the same conclusions. So, if our link with him consists in the fact that we are already a part of him, then it is up to us to receive him more completely and express him more fully. He's got it. This then is what true religion is all about. Wow. So, what I have seen thus far of religious practices, and he's talking about, people who don't understand this. So he says, one might have reflected, devote his entire life to this true religion and never stagnate. What a thrilling prospect. Okay, so then he comes back. He has these thoughts, and he's still lost in his thoughts. He comes there, and the friends around him, the so-called friends around him, they laugh at him because they are not vibrating at the same frequency that he is. So, and they think that this is normal, right? This, the world they are living in, the way of living, everybody is so hypnotized. All of us are kind of living the Maya. That is our job, right? She hypnotizes to think that this is how it is, that you are born, you study, you get a good job, you marry, you have children, you get a house. All of us think that's the normal thing to do. I mean, what's wrong with that? So and generation after generation, people continue to think that, and they instill the same thing in their children. So here he is thinking that he has just had a very profound understanding, and he comes back, and he comes with this, he gets this experience where everybody is laughing at him, and he says, and they are, what are they saying? This, forget it. They're scared. They're scared to even question that this existence. So the easy way out is forget it. Now this is how it is. Just because it takes a lot of energy to put out, to break out of it. So the natural tendency of the ego is to go with the flow. So take the easy way out. So he says that a few days later, and then he's very disappointed. He goes back to his room. Later he meets somebody. So you see, he is seeking, he is asking questions, he is questioning. The more he's tuning into that vibration, the more he's constantly thinking, God starts sending him signals. God starts sending him help. So here he meets this person who talks about Bhagavad Gita, which he didn't even know what Hindu is. He didn't even know what Bhagavad Gita, but he says it seemed familiar. Right? Now that's a hint he is giving, that probably he has been through with all this. So he says, what's that? But then he says, it also an unaccountable way felt familiar. He says Hindu scripture. He says, what's that? But this lingered on with him. So God is slowly sending in every thing. He goes through this thing, and then something lands with him. So similarly, he's saying now, but how? It wasn't that I had no idea how to improve myself. Rather, so he already has analyzed himself, introspected on himself. And again, that is, introspection is also an important aspect of in the spiritual journey, and which he has already been doing, because he very clear, he knows that what are his psychological faults, intellectual pride, overly critical nature. How many people really understand themselves so well? People are very happy to put the blame on the other person. I am like this because this happened in my childhood, something happened, so I'm very angry person, so I'm a moody person because my parents did this, because somebody else. So normally people are always putting the blame of who they are on others, but here he's very clear. He's clear, he knows what are the faults, but he doesn't know how to work that out. So he said, was it wrong, for instance? So he's again, uh, a lot of thinking is happening, a lot of introspection is happening. So he's saying that, but to me, it seemed that there were aspects to my very fault that must be considered virtues. How was I to sift one from the? How was I to know that in a particular situation, what I'm doing, is it right? Is it a virtue or is it wrong? There is nobody to tell him that. He's only coming to his own conclusions. So he's contemplating on his socially, on my more socially acceptable virtues, he says. The very opposite is true. So he's again, confused, thinking again. But it's on a very intellectual level that he is thinking. So, finally, bewildered by the sheer number of choices before me, I decided that there could be but one way out of my imperfection: God. That's beautiful chant song by Master, no? God, God, God. Maybe next class we will start the class with that song. He says, I must let him guide my life. He's already a disciple. I mean, he's talking like a disciple here. I must let him guide my life. I must leave off seeking human solutions and give up defining my search in terms of human efforts. So he's already there. He just, needs that opening where he can enter. He's also thinking, I would become a hermit. Let it all this go. And what was it I hoped to find? His question. What was it I hoped to find once I made such a complete renunciation? Peace of mind, inner strength, perhaps, little happiness. Isn't that what everybody wants? Master said that everyone in this world are only wanting two things: to escape suffering and to have happiness. And Adi Shankaracharya said, what is God? God is Satchidanand, which Master defined so beautifully as ever existing, ever conscious, ever new bliss, ever new joy, right? Happiness is still very conditioned on in this world, but joy is, it's here, right? It's very dynamic. It is that you never lose sight of it. And he says, ever new joy. You never tire of it. You never get bored of it. It's ever new all the time. So he says, wistfully I thought, happiness. Again, he got it. I recall the pure happiness I had known as a child, lost now. In my intellect, in the pseudo sophistication of my intellectual youth, would I ever find happiness again? Only I thought, if I become once again simple, like a child. Jesus Christ said, so, suffer little children to come unto me, for such is the kingdom of God. Master later on, I mean, we will read about it, how he made, because Swamiji says, no, he was very intellectual. So to make him understand that you need to get off it and become very simple, be childlike. I mean, there are beautiful memories of Swamiji with that. We will come to that when we come there. So it is very important. He again got that point that you need to be more childlike. If you see all these saints and the self-realized masters, they are not so those very grim ones. They're very childlike, very innocent, very simple, very childlike in their love for God. He says, only if I forsook my over intellectuality and opened myself completely to God's love. So he's, in that, he's moving there. And he's not understanding. This is all his own conclusions. He doesn't have anybody to say, yes, this is how it is. He says, was I losing my mind? Whoever had heard of anyone actually seeking God? Imagine, I mean, he's living in a country, in a time when this was unheard of. I mean, in India, we take it for granted. I mean, for ages, that has only been the purpose of a human life, right? I mean, if you read autobiography of a yogi, Master lived in 4 Garpa Road. In that lane, there was Ram Mohan Roy Road. In that, you had Levitating Saint. The other side, there was J.C. Bose. That side, he had a friend Tulsi. There were saints living everywhere, right? And this is something we take for granted. I mean, India, we revere our the culture of the culture that it has, that we fall at the feet of a sage or a saint, and he had never heard of something like this. So all the more we understand why Master had to go to the universe, why Jesus Christ and Babaji made this they created this thing that a person will be sent from here. So because this is what Swamiji was, there might have been so many of them who were seeking all those souls. He had to go for them. So he says, whoever had heard of anyone actually seeking God, whoever had heard of anyone communing with him, was I a complete lunatic to be dreaming of blazing trails where no man, so far as I knew, had ever ventured before? Of course, we know that so many had ventured before, but he was living in a place where he didn't have any such exposure. So he was thinking, am I going mad? Is this, this is unthinkable. For I knew nothing as yet about the lives of true saints, he says. Vaguely, I had heard them, but again, his conclusion of a saint was like, they're nice people who, ruffle the hair of the children. And he says they must be murmuring Bilali Parks, Wahis Kwam, or whatever. So some such pious formula, he says, for anybody who got in their way. So he had no clue what this was all about. He was coming to his own conclusion. He was thinking probably this is all wrong. I don't know what I'm thinking even. And he says that I knew not how to take even my first steps towards. He says, now I understood that I have to, what I need is God. But he says, how do I approach God? I didn't have any idea how to take even my first steps towards God. But my longing for him had by now become an obsession. So there is this story, right? What one saint, young guy comes to him and he says that how should I find God? What should I do if I want to find God? And the saint takes him to the sea or river, and puts his head, that boy's head, under the water and keeps it there for some time. The boy starts fluttering, and then he brings him up, and he says, "How did you feel?" He said, "Oh my God, I thought my breath will go. I would die. I was dying to come out and to take that breath." He said, "This is how you should find God. That is how you should want God, and come to me when you want God like that." So here we find Swamiji was ripe, right? He was ready to find God. He says it has become an obsession for me. Where could I turn? To whom could I look for guidance? The religious people I had marked, they were as clueless, he says, as I was. They were lost in ignorance as I was. So, and so he's, seeking. He's still very seeking. And then at this point, reason step. So then, the feeling and the reason. When the reason steps in, when, again, when the Maya comes back and tries to take him back. So it's again giving him the easy way out. No, nothing is wrong with you. That vigorous, go and live in a country. People are simple. You want simplicity, right? Go and live among simple people. Then you'll be fine. It's giving him an easy way out. And so don't waste your life on impossible dreams. Go back to the land. It isn't God you want. It's just more a natural way of life. It's just reasoning. It's just giving him some basic logic. And he says, I took it. That is how most of us do. No, it's easy to, and he says, oh, yeah, that should be the reason. And he says, is in fact not simplicity what it was at the heart of this message. For God poses so mighty a challenge to the ego that man will grasp at almost anything rather than heed the call to complete self-surrender. So the ego steps in and starts holding them back, holding us back, so giving us easy way outs. And this is where when you talk about this battle of Mahabharata, that is what it is, right? Uh, the ego always then pulls us back. That brings us to the point where we want to seek, and the same then sometimes it starts pulling us back. So when we sit down to meditate, we make all those noises, the breath, the noise of the blood flowing, the heart beating, just to keep us distracted, so that we don't, go into that center where we will find God. He is also going through that struggle. And weakling that I was, he says, I relented. I decided, heed reason's counsel. I would go off to the country, commune with the nature, and live there among more natural human beings. I mean, that's never going to happen. And we are just two more chapters away from when he meets his master. So this we conclude this chapter. This was a longish one, but much to think about, right? And we will come back next week with the next chapter. Any thoughts anybody wants to who's any thoughts that went through your mind you want to share, else can close the session today. Okay, thank you.